Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick's 1975 period drama, storytelling takes a two-part structure. In Part 1, Barry Lyndon reads like an epic, where immersion and scale are emphasized, while in Part 2 this yields to a far more focused narrative structure, akin to a Shakespearean tragedy, where character complexities, both in the form of talents and flaws, are one's own downfall. In this dual format, Kubrick tells a story of fathers, resentment, and legacy. The motifs of father figures and resentment create the lead-up to Kubrick's thesis on legacy. Using gambling and duels as metaphors, Kubrick builds a structure for the belief that life may be nasty, brutish, and short, as Hobbes famously remarked, but the greatness of a man's life lives on in his legacy. Within the first minute of Barry Lyndon, we learn that Barry grew up without a father.
Barry's father had been bred, like many other young sons of a genteel family, to the profession of the law. And there is no doubt he would have made an eminent figure in his profession, had he not been killed in a duel, which arose over the purchase of some horses.
Kubrick immediately characterizes Redmond Barry as a young boy without a father. We see this manifest itself immediately, as Barry becomes determined to imitate his father's duelist nature by engaging in a duel with Captain Quinn. He proves himself to punch above his weight and hits a far more experienced military man with his gun. Barry flees from his home, and while away from his mother, Barry finds three great men as father figures before making something great of himself in his own right. Redmond Barry adopts Captain Grogan as his first father figure. Grogan is a kind, accomplished, and familiar family figure for Barry. From Grogan, Barry learns to be open, telling about his troubles while away from home. Most importantly, though, Grogan's death breaks Barry's faith that an institution, like the military, can grant him the status and respect he deserves. Like soldiers waiting to fall in battle, the army would only bring Barry a short and unmemorable life. He escapes the army and learns to trust in his own abilities as a man rather than his comrades on the battlefield. For a moment, let's determine why Barry values status and respect beyond a superficial understanding of human nature. In his first love with Nora, Barry is betrayed and left by her for a man who is far worse looking and older, and Nora has no real connection with. Barry is described both in the book and the movie as a good-looking young man who has a real connection with Nora. What he lacks is status, wealth, and respect. Barry must attain these things in his mind to no longer be dismissed as just a young boy and to be treated with respect. Interestingly, for a man who rarely did what was popular, Kubrick specifically casted Ryan O'Neal, who at the time was considered one of the best-looking leading men in Hollywood. This further emphasizes the point that Barry was done wrong by Nora when she left him, and further emphasizes that no matter how nice or good-looking Barry was in comparison to Captain Quinn, Nora was always going to leave him for status and power. Moving on, Barry's second father figure is far less kind than Grogan, but far more accomplished. Captain Pottsdorf is a man who Barry only falls in favor with through cunning. By saving Pottsdorf, out of strategic thinking rather than love, Barry achieves rewards that a scoundrel of his reputation could scarcely hope for. From Pottsdorf, Barry learns the value of discipline, cunning, and achievement. Pottsdorf has powerful family members and is in good favor with the king. Barry never shows Pottsdorf love, but does learn a great deal about his ability to succeed against the odds. Abandoning Pottsdorf, Barry meets his most influential father figure, the Chevalier du Baliberry, a man who shares Barry's humble Irish roots, yet is surrounded by splendor beyond belief. The Chevalier inspires Barry to greatness, but most of all teaches him that good fortune isn't just good luck, but can be engineered through intelligence and cunning. Watch the scene where the Chevalier and Barry use their cunning to outplay the powerful Prince of Turbingen out of thousands of Frederick Dor.
Wein oder Punch, Euer Gnade?
Wine.
It was agreed that Barry should keep his character of valet, that in the presence of strangers he should not know a word of English, and that he should keep a good lookout on the trumps when serving the champagne and punch about. And having a remarkably fine eyesight and a great natural aptitude, he was speedily able to give his dear patron much assistance against his opponents at the green table. If, for instance, he wiped the table with a napkin, it was to show the enemy was strong in diamonds. If he adjusted a chair, it meant ace-king. If he said, punch or wine, my lord, hearts was meant, and so forth. The Prince of Tübingen was a nobleman who had intimate connections with the great Frederick. He was passionately fond of play, as indeed were the gentlemen of almost all the courts of Europe.
Sie schulden 15.500 Friedrich d'Or.
Though I cannot say how, I believe you have cheated me.
I deny your grace's accusation.
Was the prince cheated?
In as far as I am able to tell of such things, Herr Minister, no. I believe the Chevalier won the money fairly.
In the world of Barry Lyndon, those who can suspend morality and behave in a Machiavellian fashion win the game and take the spoils of war. Above all, Niccolo Machiavelli tells us what Barry learned from his three father figures: how to be great. He says, and I quote, "A prudent man will always try to follow in the footsteps of great men and imitate those who have been truly outstanding, so that, if he is not quite as skillful as they, at least some of their ability may rub off on him." Following the attainment of status and wealth by the newly appointed Barry Lyndon, resentment follows him and those around him. In his relationship with Lady Lyndon, Barry cheats on her. Not only does this create resentment in their relationship, but it shows how Barry has resentment for the responsibilities of a man of great wealth, power, and rank. As referenced before, the second part of Barry Lyndon reads like a Shakespearean tragedy, where character complexities lead to one's downfall. Barry's complexities/flaws in this case is greed. He has a beautiful and wealthy wife, yet he chooses to cheat on her openly. Barry detests the responsibilities of rank and has poor moral instincts regarding love, stemming from his experiences with Nora. Kubrick properly navigates creating a great anti-hero by showing Barry does have some misgivings about his own bad behavior, and he apologizes to Lady Lyndon, and we never see him cheat again. More resentment comes later in the film. The relationship between Lord Bullingdon and Barry represents the end of status and wealth for Barry, and a feeling of abandonment by Bullingdon.
If he had murdered Lord Bullingdon, Barry could scarcely have been received with more coldness and resentment than now followed him in town and country. His friends fell away from him, and a legend arose of his cruelty to his stepson.
My friends profess sympathy, but behind my back, I know I am despised.
Bullingdon rightly despises Barry for replacing his father.
My father was Sir Charles Lyndon. I have not forgotten him if others have.
Lord Bullingdon, you have insulted your father.
And Barry rightly despises Lord Bullingdon for writing him off from the very start as his new father, despite Barry's promise of fairness.
I have always been willing to live with you on terms of friendship. But be clear about one thing. As men serve me, I serve them. I've never laid a cane on the back of a lord before, but if you force me to, I shall speedily become used to the practice. Do Do you have anything to say for yourself?
No.
You may go.
Barry believed, and not without some reason, that it had been a declaration of war against him by Bullingdon from the start, and that the evil consequences which ensued were entirely of Bullingdon's creating.
Kubrick's thesis on legacy can only be fully understood through his thesis on life. Using both this film and many others, life is a cold place, human nature is immutable, and moral qualities don't win. In Barry Lyndon, a man's legacy is lasting in reference to the greatness of his deeds, and is not tainted by a tragic fall from grace. Barry Lyndon chooses a very kind-hearted legacy in a cold world. He chooses to love his son, Brian, with all his heart, and seeks to become the father he never had, but always wanted. Only for his son to die, leaving Barry to give up on his own life. No longer do duels or playing cards represent an opportunity for Barry, but a reminder of the fleeting nature of life. In the film's final duel, he redeems his flaws. At the end, choosing to show Bullingdon love, he is repaid with cruelty, disfigurement, and has his life stolen from him. If traced to its origin, all of Barry's problems stem from greed, albeit very logical greed. When Barry seeks to become a lord in his own right, he gambles with his future and loses. Once a boxer in the ring that punched above his weight, he is now a fighter with no punches left to pull. No matter how things turned out for Barry in the end, every man, good or bad, handsome or ugly, rich or poor, is judged and lives on forever by the merit and extraordinary nature of his accomplishments. We know that Barry's story and legacy lives on when the narrator tells us,
Utterly baffled and beaten, what was the lonely and broken-hearted man to do? He took the annuity and returned to Ireland with his mother to complete his recovery. Sometime later, he traveled to the continent. His life there, we have not the means of following accurately, but he appears to have resumed his former profession of a gambler without his former success. He never saw Lady Lyndon again.
In this, Kubrick tells us that the tragedy of Barry Lyndon was a story worth telling, a story filled with unwinnable odds, and a story worth remembering. Like the greatness and genius of the Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, Barry's rise was unprecedented, as was the unfathomability of his fall.